Hello there.
Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Talking Smack, where we talk superheroes, movies, animation, and comics. I am your host, Josh Scar, and joining me this week is Alex. Alex, how you doing?
Pretty good. Excited to be back, and I'm enjoying this weather we're having. It is 80s in April. That is rare.
It is a beautiful day. We had a great day yesterday, too. And we're also joined by Matt. Matt, how you doing?
I'm doing good. Glad to be back. We are also up here in Wisconsin getting good weather, and I am living for it. It was an off winter.
So we are here this week to talk about Star Wars Celebration 2023 over in Europe. And before we get into that, we're going to hear from our friends who were just here, what was it, last week? I think it was last week, to talk about the Mario Brothers movie. But we're going to hear from our friends over at the Game Club Pod, which, just a forewarning, I listened to the ad. I forgot to have them update the promo. So they're still calling themselves the Video Game Club in the promo, but they're now just the Game Club Pod. And everywhere you can find them is the Game Club Pod. So we'll hear from Joey, Tim, and Slade, and we'll be right back.
Join me, Slade, and my two co-hosts
Joey and Tim
over at the Video Game Club, where once every 2 weeks we review a video game, not too dissimilar to a book club.
podcast.
You can you can find us at the Video Game Club on all good podcast providers and some sketchy ones as well.
All right, I got a quick question about that.
No.
Too bad. So the promo says once every 2 weeks we review video games. Now that they're just the Club Pod, what do they review every 2
They're
weeks?
the Game Club Pod, not the Club Pod.
Oh,
They don't just
sorry.
they
the
don't
Game Club
review
Pod.
like cricket bats and baseball bats and shit.
Well, if they're the Game Club Pod, they should.
They broaden their horizons should they choose to go down that avenue.
Well, I think that is something that they have discussed privately. Maybe I'm giving too much of a peek behind the curtain to use one of Slade's favorite colloquialisms. I think that they would like to venture beyond just video games, but it's a matter of finding the ability to do stuff like that, like tabletop games and other things. Maybe I'm speaking out of my ass. I don't know. That seems like something that being the Game Club Pod would mean.
Slade, that sounds binding. Josh said it. You have to do it now.
That's what I heard. And then once they run out of tabletop games, they can. I'm looking for their 2027 review of the new line of Louisville Slugger baseball bats. Because that's good audio, because you can actually hear the crack of the bat as it hits the ball.
Yeah, there's nothing better than a good hit on a radio call for a baseball game. You just hear that.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Oh yeah,
Sports.
that is Tennessee hickory right there in that Louisville.
Sports and such, yeah.
But we've got some big announcements from Star Wars Celebration Europe, which we are going to talk about this week. We're going to start by talking off. What the hell does that mean? We're going to start by talking about the TV shows that were announced, and then we're going to talk about some movies that were announced, which Star Wars loves doing that DC thing where they just announce a bunch of shit that's not going to happen. So we'll kind of put a scale on it to see what
Putting the
we
cart
think
before the
is going to
horse.
happen.
We'll get there. We'll get there.
And then we're just going to talk about like the state of Star Wars as well at the end if we have the time. But let's get moving along. Okay, so TV shows that were announced. Tales of the Jedi Season 2 was announced, which I am all for. I just kind of hope that it's something new. Like, I would love to see them do something with, like, Kanan or Caleb Doom, as he would be called as a Padawan. Like, maybe shift focus away from Ahsoka. I know she's a monetary goldmine, but I would like to see something that's not just Ahsoka based. So, like, maybe give us some Kanan stuff that we haven't seen before.
Did they show anything, or did they just announce it?
They just announced. As
Okay.
far as I know, it was just announced. I don't even know if they actually talked about content within what season 2 will be.
Yeah, like one hopes that the format would lend itself so well to, it in and of itself. The first season is kind of an anthology of just two characters that we know from Clone Wars a lot. So you would hope that they could do that, tell different stories about different characters, especially now that, like, go ahead.
I was gonna say they can even do young Anakin. We have a 10-year gap from the time he becomes Obi-Wan's apprentice that we can see some stories that build him into
Yeah,
the Anakin that we see in Attack of the Clones.
yeah, and especially now that Ahsoka seems to be, they seem to be positioning her as a transitioning to like a live action character in that corner of the universe. That seems like a good bet. I think is all I'm getting at.
Yeah, speaking of Ahsoka, I really hope Ashley Eckstein gets something added to her plate in the Star Wars universe, just because it is going to become Rosario Dawson's thing for
Yeah,
the rest of time. Even though Ashley Eckstein's been playing that character for what, almost 20
15,
years at this point,
15 years, I
15
think.
years.
Yeah, if it
Yeah,
Clone Wars starts in 2008, right?
yeah, because
Yeah,
Tales of the Jedi was a 15-year celebration of the start of the Clone Wars series. So, like, yeah, Ashley Eckstein, she deserves as much praise as Rosario Dawson, if not more, for helping create that character and bringing her to life. But moving along, getting off my soapbox, the next one of the next announcements we had was the Skeleton Crew, starring Jude Law and a bunch of unknown younger actors. Everything I see on this series, it really just reminds me of that old Nickelodeon show Space Cases, but it's Star Wars, so it's probably going to be a little more grim.
Space Cases ruled.
Oh yeah, this is great. Jewel State with rainbow hair and an invisible friend. Walter
Yeah.
E. Jones.
Wow, that I just knew it. I just remembered it existed. I'm into this. I don't know that it's for me. Like I don't know that it's a show that I'm like gonna make sure I tune into. But it's one of those things that it seems like this is kind of what you should do if you're gonna make Star Wars a big brand. This is the kind of stuff you can do, right? Where you can just do a live action show for kids that is just you can play in the space a little bit, which I think is interesting.
Well, I've just been thinking, didn't they already try something like this with like a game show about being young Jedi or something like that?
Yeah, it was
I
great.
swear.
They did a Legends of the Hidden Temple with Kelleran Bach, aka Ahmed Best, as the host. And
Yeah.
yeah, it was good. I like that one a lot. It
Okay.
was a YouTube exclusive on Star Wars Kids, but it was basically Legends of the Hidden Temple, but with Star Wars.
This is like a narrative show set in the universe, though, right? Not like a
Yes,
yeah.
this will be, like I said, it's I from the description I have seen, it's basically Space Cases where a young crew and their elder leader are just stuck out in space for whatever
Decrepit
reason,
old
and they
man
have.
Jude Law.
Well, I remember when they announced this, I think it was last year at Star Wars Celebration Anaheim, where they were like, "Oh, it's going to be a cast of unknowns. It's going to be this. It's going to be that." And then they're like, "Oh, and here's our lead, Jude Law. You've never heard of him before, but he's here to tell us about Skeleton Crew."
I guess you got to have one big name to get the buzz, right? Maybe I don't know. I mean, that's probably the executive thinking at least.
Okay, all right. This is where it is. Jude Law is now in the Disney house. That's right. He is Captain Hook and Peter Pan and Wendy. He's into the phase of his career where he's like, all right, I need some easy
Yeah,
Disney
it's time for that
money.
money. Yeah, I'll stand in front of a blue screen
Hmm.
for 20 minutes.
Yep, exactly. Okay, reading the synopsis of Skeleton Crew, it could be interesting, but to me, it almost sounds like Lost in Space with Jude Law.
Yeah, that's Space Cases.
Yeah,
It
yeah,
was Lost in
okay,
Space, but with like an entire crew of space cadets.
Update your references,
okay.
Alex.
I'm sorry. Lost in Space is a lot newer than Space Cases, considering it had 3 seasons on Netflix. 3 seasons on
It didn't
Netflix.
exist prior to that. There was no movie starring Joey from Friends. There was no TV show prior to that.
What's Joey? Okay, so the thing about Joey is, my wife and I say it occasionally to each other because we watch
We
Friends
can't.
and we watch
Okay,
Joey.
sorry to channel my inner Matt here. We can't get into these weeds. We're here to talk about Star Wars,
No,
not
no,
Joey spin.
He already started
no,
the
no. Okay,
story. He already started the
yeah.
diversion.
So Jennifer Coolidge is on that show. She's his agent, which by the way, Jennifer Coolidge getting a great resurgence this year. Love her, Stifler's mom. And he shows up to her house to talk about like some kind of issue or something, and she opens the door like wearing like a nightie or something like that and shouts, "Welcome to Caligula's." And then she's like, "Oh, you." And he's like, "Are you having a party?" And she's like, "Yes, I'm not invited." And like she shuts the door on his face.
That show sounds great.
but, But every once in a while, my wife and I will just like be passing by each other and go, "Welcome to Caligula." It's just the stupidest thing. It's the only thing about that show that's stuck into my head.
Put Jennifer Coolidge in a Star Wars.
Oh my god, can you imagine her in a Star Wars like as like doing the bend and pop or something like that? The bend and snap, sorry. Before the Legally Blonde people come and try to kill me.
They will.
And you light your lightsaber as you bend and snap their head off.
I'm just watching Josh like force that grin as he just gets angrier and
I
angrier
don't.
and angrier.
I'm not hating this conversation. We've only got like 45 minutes left. I don't know where we're at in the edit time, but we've already been doing this for about 15 minutes. Plus, we talked for 15 minutes before this. And then we had some technical issues when we started recording, and then we had to restart recording. We're so
all right,
far into
let's
weeds.
keep it moving. What's
All right,
next?
so next up is the Acolyte, which from the sounds of it, I'm really excited for this one. It's set in between, somewhere between 100 years before the prequels. I don't know exactly where. It's like the High Republic is the big like non-movie thing going on right now in the books and the comics, and that ends like 100 years before the Phantom Menace. So the Acolyte is set in between there, and it sounds like it's going to be like a noir kind of Star Wars setting, but with Jedi and Sith and everything. It's created by Leslie Headland, who I believe is she the one who was part of The Hate You Give? I'm looking at the Deadline story here, just trying to make sure I get everything correct. Yeah, she was Headland was joined on stage by the main cast, including the Hate You Give actress Amandla Stenberg, Squid Game Emmy Award winner Lee Jung Jae, and Manny Jacinto and Daphne Keene. And there's like a whole bunch of names here that most people won't know, but if you've watched like obscure TV and cinema, you would probably know who most of these people are. But this show sounds really cool. It's a former Padawan who it sounds like they walked away from the order at some point, but they come back to be the reluctant partner of Jedi Master played by Lee Jung Jae, and they have to solve a murder mystery essentially in the Star Wars universe with Jedi and everything. And probably spoiler alert, but it's probably going to be Carrie Ann Moss. She's in this series as well.
Yeah, okay. So I have a quick bone to pick with you about this. You said people that are obscure. Manny Jacinto is from The Good Place. That was a big show. Jodie Turner Smith is a big name. And I'm sorry, but Daphne Keene, X-23, that's a name. How dare you
It's
say
been
that these people are not
7
important?
years since we've seen her in the
She just got off of
gritty
3
Wolverine
Yeah,
movie.
she was
seasons.
just on his Dark Materials on HBO.
Yeah, 3 seasons of his Dark Materials. That was
I'm sorry,
watched by tens of people.
exactly. Thank you. Point proven.
If that show has 100 fans, I'm one of them. If it has one, I'm one of them. If it has none, I'm dead.
Ooh. Okay, the last season of the Dark Materials average viewership was 150,000 people.
But
I can see that point to Josh. People we've never heard of.
And like Daphne Keene, most people would just know her as the girl from Wolverine X-23.
Yeah, that's her biggest profile role. Yeah.
Yeah, and again,
Yeah.
she was a child then. It's been a while, so no one's going to recognize her anyway, or they'll be like, huh, she looks familiar. And then they'll look it up like, oh my God. Sort of like Henry Cavill, where everyone's like, huh, he looks familiar. And then they're like, oh my God, he's the kid from Count of Monte Cristo.
That is what they know him from. Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay, I'm going to be honest here. I watched Top Gun Maverick like 6 times.
I'm
I
sorry.
did not realize that Manny Jacinto was one of actually the random people that Tom Cruise was training. He's Lieutenant Billy Fritz Avalon. I did
Billy
not
Fritz
even realize he was
Avalon.
in that movie.
It's just because you're so focused on the worst person in the world, Tom Cruise.
First off, allegedly. Second off, he is very compelling in that movie.
I
And Jennifer Connelly.
it's hard to go wrong with Jennifer Connelly.
I was going to say.
But yeah, this at least, obviously we haven't seen anything from this, but the pitch is good and the cast is great. So I'm like, I am at least in enough to like check it out, right?
Yeah.
Quick question.
42.
So this is set. Thank you. Oh, that actually sounds right. So this is set 100 years before the Phantom Menace. Any possibility that this Carrie Ann Moss is Darth Sidious's master?
Wouldn't that be Darth Plagueis? I mean, I guess we don't.
We don't know Darth Plagueis' gender.
That's fair. I don't know that we would have a Darth Plagueis. I feel like they would make a big deal out of that.
I mean, unless that's like the big
That's the
reveal at
big
the
twist,
end.
maybe.
As you said, Carrie Ann Moss, you're like, oh, that's going to be the bad person because she's the biggest name. And the whole like, what is it? Yoda said that the Sith haven't been seen for hundreds of years or something like that. They've been gone. If they've been quietly working in the background, and this is a noir, it makes sense that like there's probably no survivors kind of
Yeah.
thing, and that she reveals herself as Darth Plagueis kind of thing.
Gets got.
Yeah,
Or
I mean,
kills them both.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I wouldn't hate it because that would just make a whole bunch of fanboys really pissed off.
That's one of my favorite things. That's why I like most of the things I like now.
I just would find that fascinating because Carrie Ann Moss, she's mid-50s, I think, like
Yeah.
that. And the whole like I am being Darth Plagueis, she could try to extend her life kind of thing. I have no idea how old the guy who played Palpatine was in
Ian McDermott, he was.
in episode 1, 50s, 60s.
He was probably in his late 40s, early 50s, something in there.
Yeah, I mean, you could say that she extended her, life. She's like her late 90s, early 100s or something like that. Been working at that, and he up and coming young buck kills her,
Yeah.
gets the story. That could be fascinating.
How ironic.
Mm-hmm.
Ian McDermott was 55 during the Phantom Menace, early to mid 50s for filming.
Yeah, so that could be really interesting.
Yeah, I wouldn't hate it. I just personally I don't think it is, but I'm usually wrong on these things. Anyone who listens to Talking Lasso knows every prediction I make is wrong. So, speaking of predictions, the Star Wars Rebels spinoff slash it'd be Star Wars Rebels follow-up series slash Mandalorian spinoff. Ahsoka is coming, and the Rebels fan in me is very excited for this. We had Zeb show up in an episode of Mando. We got to see Sabine. We got to see Mary Elizabeth Winstead as Hera, which I predicted. I called that out when we were doing the Star Wars celebration last year, I believe.
You're right sometimes.
I'm right sometimes when it's a very obvious casting choice. I mean, there were people thinking that she might get announced as like an evil Sith for the Acolyte or something, but she just it seemed more like a Hera casting to me. So I'm cool with that. We got to see Chopper in the trailer, a little bit of a hologram of Ezra, which I forget the guy who's playing Ezra. But the Ahsoka trailer, there's some stuff that like really bothered me because in the Mando episode that she first appeared in, Alex and we talked about this where there's just something off with the physicality that they do. Like, I don't know if it's the wire work or something, but there's like that shot where she drops from the ceiling and she's just falling really slowly, which I mean, you could say she's using the force to slow her descent. Like, okay, it still just looks weird. But I don't know if it's because they're really trying to protect Rosario Dawson or just like the stunt work isn't quite there with like all the prosthetics that they have to wear. But the physicality of some of the things that they do just doesn't look quite right to me. Like it looks really stunted, not to put a play on words, just like really jagged, like not smooth at all.
Well, yeah, and I think the show looks cool. The trailer was cool. I have not seen Rebels yet, but I'm happy all y'all are eating good.
Yes, we are.
There is still a part of me that is like, and I know why this is the case. All the business reasons, all the like creative reasons. There's still a part of me that is like, why isn't this an animated show? Like,
yes,
I get it. I know why it's not, but I'm still like, and that ties into that too, because like I only recently watched the final season of Clone Wars, and that's very Ahsoka heavy, and beautiful action, beautiful choreography in that entire season. That I think that live action, whether no matter who it is who's playing Ahsoka, just like cannot match. So I think that's just gonna happen when it's live action, unfortunately.
Well, I mean, for me, it's even when she's just moving, and I understand what you're saying, where animation is just very smooth. and you can make it do whatever you want to do, really, within your budget constraints. But like, I think there's a shot in the Mandalorian episode where she's just running, and it looks weird,
And
and
it probably is
it
because she's got a big fucking thing on her head.
yeah, and like I get that, but you would think that they would train the stunt person or something, or they would. I don't know if it's Rosario Dawson running or the stunt person, but it's almost like Ezra Miller running as the Flash. Like, who runs like this?
Right.
Yeah, that's actually been something that's been bothering me a little bit. I understand that the TV shows have different budgets than the movies, where they're allowed months and months of training and like 70,000 takes and stuff like that. But we're getting really good stunt work and movement in on the Mandalorian, and that's because you have stunt people in the outfits that are trained to do it. Um, as we know, Pedro Pascal is almost never on set, so they have stunt people doing all the work, and then you of course have all the random Mandos. But
Randos.
I wonder if it's part. I wonder if part of it is the constraint of where they're filming, because
Hmm.
they're filming on that little sound stage that has these giant 4K screens that are 20 feet tall that surround them. And I wonder if it's like, listen, you have a 10-foot space to move in, and if you touch that freaking screen, that screen's
Yeah,
$50 million.
right.
You can't damage that. And I just wonder if it's partially it's just they're not allowed to move through their environment because
Mm,
of their environment.
there or lack thereof.
Yeah, and I think that thing has been a really cool tool for them to use in these shows. That's I think is better than a green screen.
You don't get those harsh lines, and it actually looks like they're on location and everything. Like there
Yeah,
is a
but
benefit to it.
there are times where I think you can see the limitations, just because at the end of the day, even if you have a big screen that's showing you a sky and you can get some of the lighting and stuff, it's not the same as like being in a space, right? That you can move around in the same
Hmm.
way. So I bet there are some of those constraints there where it's like, well, legally, according to your contract, according to our code, you can only get within 20 feet of this screen, or otherwise we're going to sue you or something.
And I feel like we are kind of like dogging a lot on these announcements, which like it's not intentional. It's just I feel like there's an inherent skepticism, just because we have been teased so much in the Star Wars announcements that it's like, okay, this has been announced, but is it really going to happen? This has been announced, but what was the quality really of this project?
Yeah, I mean,
Um,
everything that they've announced, I'm not someone who is like obsessive about Star Wars. I generally tend to follow the shows as they come out, but I'm interested in everything. Interested
mhm.
to excited, somewhere on that spectrum. Everything if it happens, I'm generally positive about until I see it, and maybe it's not worth the time. But some of that remains to be seen, right?
Yeah, and for the most part, the stuff that we have received announcements for and everything, or that we have seen from Star Wars, Andor, Obi-Wan. Um, I think the worst of the worst is the Bad Batch, but I think that's just remarkably average. It's not, to me, it's not adding too much. Like there are some really good episodes in there, especially in season two. But overall, I feel like it's very average. But like I really enjoyed Obi-Wan, even for like some of the weird continuity things that they threw in there. Um, him having a little side adventure with Leia, like, okay, I get it, but also did it need to be Leia? I get it, but I think Obi-Wan for the most part was really good. And I think Ahsoka, especially as if they are making it a Star Wars Rebels follow up, a true Star Wars Rebels follow up, I think it has a lot of potential. The only issue I have canonically with it is that at the end of Rebels, which sorry, spoilers, Matt, Ahsoka shows up looking kind of like a Jedi priestess, where it still seems like she's very much like, I'm not a Jedi, this is not my thing. And it, I feel like we're missing part of that journey that gets her to the point where she's showing up decked in white robes and looking very Jedi masterish, and what we have seen in Mando and Book of Boba Fett. But before we move on, I do want to address the blue alien in the room, which is they did confirm that Lars Mikkelsen, who voiced Thrawn in Star Wars Rebels, is coming back as Thrawn for this series as well.
Oh, I'm so excited.
People are hyped. Yeah.
Yeah, I can't wait to get that storyline of him trying to seduce Leia, the heir to the Empire story. It's gonna be good.
Yeah, they even said those four magic words that so many Star Wars fans have been waiting for is
Yeah,
heir to the Empire,
they're
which
gonna
that
bring in
was.
another CGI Leia homunculus like the other Rogue One.
Oh, it's gonna be. I'm so excited.
And then before we get into Matt's steak dinner here, we also got a trailer for Star Wars Visions 2, which I believe drops on May 4th. I'm very
And
excited for
also
this
with
because it
you.
seems. I believe it is dropping on May 4th, but it looks like they're moving away from strictly anime and they're bringing in other animation houses, which I think is a really cool concept. It looks like they have like the Wallace and Gromit house
Yep.
doing something. There's just a lot of really cool looking episodes in there, which I just recently rewatched The Village Bride again from Star Wars Vision season 1, which I think that was my favorite one from that collection of stories. But like Visions is such a cool concept that I'm happy they're bringing it back and they're expanding it beyond just anime.
Yeah, no, this is actually exciting. I actually like the animatrixing of the Star Wars universe with stuff like Tales of the Jedi and Star Wars Visions. It is almost more satisfying to me to watch those than it is to actually watch a quote unquote normal series or movie.
Yeah, because
It
they're
it's
self-contained
yeah.
stories that we can just watch like one or two and be like, that was good, and then I'll come back to it later. And
Yeah.
maybe you come back a year later and you're like, oh yeah, this was the thing. So let's start talking about the meat of these announcements because we've got a few announcements afterwards for movies, but Andor season 2, Andor Meet Cutes K2SO. Matt, how about you kick us off with this one?
I mean, all I have to say is Andor fucking rolls. It is easily, if not the best, it is in the top like two or three things that Star Wars things that Disney has done. It is the best. Um, I cannot get enough of it. What is it? August 2024 they said, or somewhere around there.
That's the
That
expected release date, yeah.
that feels so far away, but I am I'm fucking hype. That show rules. Let's do it.
Alex?
Okay. I've never heard of this show, so I mean, yeah, I'm glad it's getting the second season.
If you're being at all facetious, I beg you, go watch it. I
No,
know that you're probably that you're just pulling my chain, but anyone out there, if you haven't watched it, go watch it.
I just have no interest in it. Andor was fine in Rogue One. I just don't really care to watch a backstory for some. It bothers me when they do things like this, when they keep the original actors to cast them in something that happened way before something they did a long time ago. So you're expecting me to watch this person who's like 8 to 9 years older than when they were in the movie to then act like 5 to 10 years younger than they were in the movie. So I have to shed like weirdly shed in my head 17 years of like, it just bothers me. And frankly, I found Andor compelling in the movie, but I just don't want to watch another show filling another gap in the Star Wars thing. I want something new and
Here's the
interesting.
thing.
I don't need more gap filler between three and
Well, here's the
four.
thing. Here's the thing. I hear what you're saying. I generally absolutely agree. I cannot stress enough that this is exactly what that show is that you're asking for. Like, I know that it sounds like here's the story of the backstory of Cassian Andor. We're gonna fill these gaps to a certain degree, yes, but like it is
It's so good.
the freshest and most interesting take on Star Wars in the universe in years. And I saw when you say to me, I want something new. I want something that's not just filling in the cracks. I'm not just want to see another prequel thing. That is this show. And
Hmm.
it does take a couple episodes to get going. Like it's a 13 episode season.
There's a reason they released the first 3 episodes at once, is because they knew that's where you're like, oh hell yeah, let's get going.
Yeah, but I think, if you get to like the halfway point in the season and you are not bought in, maybe a little earlier than the halfway point, but then maybe it's not for you. But I cannot stress enough that like the things it is doing.
Okay, what is it doing that's interesting? I mean,
It's honestly, it's the stuff that the prequels wanted to be interesting. It's the political intrigue, it's the espionage. The way I would characterize this movie or this show is that it's a trilogy set into 12 parts. So like you have
okay,
a four
hold on,
part
wait.
It's taking
episode.
like a Clone Wars structure where
Oh,
it's got
wait.
arcs, and
Okay, how many episodes do a Jedi or Sith show up?
None. 0.
Okay, not even that fake bullshit that the Star Wars fans say, like, well, the Force switchers aren't actually the Force users;
0.
they're actually like
0.
okay, because that when I was watching the first season of The Mandalorian, I was like, this is the Star Wars show I wanted. I didn't want any goddamn Force users. I didn't want any Sith. I didn't want any of this bullshit. Just show me the lives of normal people who are living out
That
there
is the
doing
show.
cool shit.
That is the show.
Yes.
There, there's like maybe a character.
Okay, I'll give it a
Yeah,
try.
there's maybe 1 or 2 characters who like I could see them in the second season revealing, oh, by the way, they're like a Jedi or something, but that's not what the show is about at all. Like, there's not a lightsaber. There's not, there's dudes wearing robes, but not in like a forcey way. Like,
We don't see the Emperor at all. It's all about the ISB, the interior, the
yeah,
the
yeah, and it's
internal
about like how
Imperial.
like just how the world works, and like every character is so like meaty and fleshed out, almost to a certain degree. The least of which of those being Andor himself. Like the rest of the cast is so interesting and complex that you almost are surprised that it came out of Star Wars. Like
So there's no random like Donnie Yen, who obviously is a Force user, who's not a Force user in the show.
Nope.
no. Mm-mm.
Oh,
And you
okay.
see,
Okay, you know
some
what?
stuff, and there are some
I-
things where it's like it's kind of gesturing at Andor's story in Rogue One, but in general, it's not like, oh, and that's how he got the fancy jacket he wears in that movie or whatever, or that's how this
And
happens.
that's why he shot that guy at the beginning of the movie.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, I
like,
mean, it
okay.
is setting that sort of stuff up, but I mean, the movie does its own thing of
but
like
from a
showing
character
like
perspective, like it's trying it to that degree. It's sort of showing you how he becomes that person, but like in a way that is like character development and not, aha, here's the moment where that happens, like Star Wars does a lot.
Okay, I will give it a shot.
yeah, of the Star Wars Disney Plus series, this is the best one. Like this is the whole thing where like this is what peak Star Wars can be in a universe if you do not focus solely on space wizards.
Yeah. And I will just caution again for you and anyone else who has not seen it. The first episode or 2 moves a little slowly. It is really kind of putting pieces on the board. So like if that doesn't work for you right away, I would implore you to just like give it a few, and then by like the 3rd episode, 4th episode, it's kind of doing that stuff in full force, and that's where it
Yeah,
really,
it's the Game of Thrones.
yeah,
It's the Game of Thrones storytelling. The
Mhm.
first 3 to 5 episodes are set in a place.
Yeah.
Something big happens in 6. There's a cool down. Episode 7, something big happens. 9's a twist. 10, we're like wrapping.
Yeah.
up.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so with
okay.
this one though, I would say it's like it's a 4-episode arc set in 3 parts in one season. So you have episodes 1 through 4, which tells you a certain part of the story, and then you have episodes 5 through 8, which tells you the next part, and then you have episodes 9 through 12 that tells you the last part. They all flow together, but it is kind of a trilogy of
there's discrete
movies.
arcs, yeah, which are, yeah, they all flow from one to the other, but it's like this is the episode where we're doing this, and this is the episode about this, and this is the episode or the set about this.
All right.
Yeah, Andor, as Matt would say, whips.
Yeah, it whips it, like, and it's not a thing. I was also the same way where I'm like, do I need to watch a show about Andor? I like that movie, I'll check it out. And by the time I got to the 3rd episode, I was like, this is something.
Yeah, and Alex, you're gonna if I may be so bold, you're probably gonna get Mandoed like I did, where they announced Mandalorian, and I'm like, why do I give a fuck about the Mandalorian? And then I watched the first episode and was like, okay, I give a fuck. Like, if you give it a fair chance, Andor will do that to you.
No, I'll give it a shot. I was like, I just don't care,
I get
man.
it.
Like, at this point, it's just I am tired of them doing their slavish worship of the timeline between between 3 and 4. I'm like, I'm tired of this shit. And so I was like, and they brought back this, which I'm not saying anything against the actor. It's just it's something that sticks in my head. Like, what is it?
I didn't
The
hear you
game-
complain
not
about
the
it
Game of
with
Thrones.
Temple of Doom, man. Yeah, I have never heard you complain about that with Temple of Doom.
Okay, he was acting 3 years younger. What is it?
Andor is only
that-
acting like 2 or 3 years younger too. So just because it's
Okay,
6
no,
or 7
that's like
years after.
It's like 17, man.
Okay, let's move on because
Just
yeah.
moving on. We're moving on.
So let's get into the movies that were announced because
That's
Star
from the
Wars
Andor minute.
just sort of. Never mind. I'm not going to say it.
Movies.
So we have some movies announced. The first one we'll talk about here is it's essentially like a Force Origins story that will be directed by James Mangold. I feel like they kind of did a 1-2 punch where they're like, hey, we know this is Star Wars Celebration, but it's actually more like Lucasfilm Celebration. We just know you're not going to come out for Lucasfilm Celebration, so we call it Star Wars. But here's an Indiana Jones trailer, and here's James Mangold, who directed Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. By the way, he's going to direct a Star Wars movie set even before the High Republic, and we're gonna or the Old Republic, and we're gonna tell the story of like the origin of the Jedi and the Sith, or at least that's my understanding of what they're trying to talk about here.
I'm so curious to know if this is more interesting than that, and that's just an easy way to sell it, because like the origin of the Jedi and the Sith is like sounds extremely boring to me. But maybe there's something more to it than just that.
I I don't know, man. I like James Mangold, but
Well said.
oh, okay. Oh, wait. Okay, hold on. I found a quote. He said, "This is going to be a biblical epic. This is going to be my 10 Commandments." Okay, I mean, I'll see it. I have massive reservations about the first person who figured out how to use the Force, and then maybe we get some weird, cool duality storytelling of like siblings who part ways or some crap, and their teachings are destined to hate each other forever and ever and ever until an old man is thrown down the elevator shaft.
Starting the cycle, the never-ending cycle.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, with anything, there's potential here, and I mean, James Mangold. I am one of the rare people that did not like Logan, but we'll see what happens with his Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny,
This
and
is troubling information to learn about you at such a late date.
yeah, I mean, we've been
We don't have
friends
to
for
get
over
into
20
it.
years.
We don't have to get into it, but I'm going to be really thinking some things after this.
He preferred the Wolverine over Logan.
I was more entertained by the Wolverine, honestly. I mean, the
I
ending
think-
sucks, but
I think there could be a case for that. I don't know that I subscribe to it, but okay. We should move on.
Yeah, I'm just talking pure entertainment value. Like I know I'm in the wrong. I will openly admit to that, but yeah, moving on. We have our first announced post-sequel trilogy movie, which will focus on Rey starting a new Jedi Order, which sounds fine in principle, but it also seems like that should have been the sequel movies.
I raised my hand. I have a question for you.
Hit us.
42.
So, that feels right. Anyway, so they announced a James Mangold movie about discovering the Force and building a Jedi Order, and then their sequel movie is about someone who discovered the Force and starting a Jedi Order. Am I getting this right?
Sounds
Well,
like
there's
it.
no confirmation that the James Mangold movie is going to focus on the creation of the Jedi Order.
Actually,
But
there's another
for the
quote where
most
they said it's about the founding of the Jedi Order.
okay, I missed that part in the StarWars.com synopsis.
Yeah, that's actually what it was, is the discovery of the Force and the founding of the first Jedi Order. That's why I brought it up. I'm like, 2 original movies about founding of the Jedi Order.
the Daisy Ridley thing is interesting to me because I think she's great. I think there are some ways in which she is not well served as a character by those 3 movies, and we can agree and disagree on where specifically in the sequels that is most evident. The thing that sticks to me is the Jedi Order thing, not because of the similarity to the Mangold thing. And this is another case where I'm hoping that it's just like, this is the easiest way to sell it when we need to pitch it. But like, so much of the sequels, to the degree that there is a through line, is about like, well, and so much of like some of the stuff that comes up in talking about the Clone Wars and talking about the prequels, all that kind of stuff, is questioning like, was the Jedi Order like, is that something you want to recreate? Is that like something that should just come back, right? So like those are things I'm interested in exploring, but I also would be disappointed if it was a movie that was like, and now we're back at the temple and we're sitting in the same chair that Yoda sat in that time, you know? Like I it's one of those things where what I want to see is something different in terms of like whatever the Jedi or Force users, if they don't call themselves the Jedi anymore, I want to see something that is like not just bringing back the stuff that was before the Rise of the Empire, right? And hopefully this movie will do some of that, but I don't know. You know what I mean?
My my issue with this movie in the way in the announcement of it, and this is me being extremely salty, is that this is what I wanted from 7, 8, and 9. And from what I understand, when Lucas gave signed over the rights, there it's been oft repeated, so who knows if it's true or not, that Iger gave a like like a handshake acknowledgement. Hey, thank you for your scripts for 7 through 12. Yeah, we'll take a look at them and we'll film them, and then immediately threw that all away to do their own vision.
Which
But
there was
it has
none.
come, yeah, it has come out that 7, 8, and 9 was basically about Luke's new Jedi Order and the new existential threat that would be facing. Who knows if that would pull from the like the legacy crap of Palpatine returns because there's 75 clones of him, or they get to the Sun Crusher and all that crap. Who knows? But it rubs me the wrong way that they're going to have. I'm just calling this 10 because this will probably be acknowledged as episode 10. That now they have someone else who's calling themselves Skywalker, starting yet and starting a new Jedi Order, when we should have seen the glory of that in 7, 8, and 9, and how and how Luke and Leia and their children were challenged by whatever was coming. And that really does bother me, especially with the whole reveal that Rey is a Palpatine. However, that came to be. Who got on with who? But
Whenever it's
that
Palpatine,
is
it's all
just gonna
clones.
it's just gonna it sits with me wrong that we're getting a non Skywalker, but yes, it's calling themselves Skywalker storyline of founding of the new Jedi Order, when the person who I expected it to and the family that I expected it to was basically wiped away as complete failures of in their lives. And that's where it doesn't sit right with me. I think it could be interesting. I think it's just being told from the wrong perspective with the baggage that 789 created.
Sure. I mean, I guess we'll see. Who knows? Because like,
Yeah, I mean, it could be interesting, but they have a lot to make up for, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I don't know if I would put it as bluntly as you did there, where like it doesn't feel like it's being the new Jedi Order is being founded by the wrong person, to not so eloquently paraphrase what you said. It does really feel odd to not have the new Jedi Order storyline being followed up with Luke, which they're trying to like band-aid into like Mando and Book of Boba Fett and stuff. But it's not going to be as impactful, I don't think, because we
well,
know where it's
Right.
going.
even then, like that was a thing that annoyed me about Book of Boba Fett, where like, I generally am, I like the things that The Last Jedi does with Luke, and I think there are ways in that gap where you can make it so that he, if you're going to tell stories in the interim between Return of the Jedi and where he shows up in The Last Jedi, you can do it such a way that he's like, he had a big failure that was really fucked up, but he's not like a total failure, right? But in his appearance in Mandalorian or Book of Boba Fett, what's the difference? Um, that is a show where he's like trying to rebuild the Jedi Order, but he's like just doing the same shit, right? Where he's like, "Hey, Baby Yoda, you have to choose between attachments and being a Jedi," which is like, if we really want to get into all like the the meta commentary of a lot of the prequel era, that's how you get a Darth Vader, you know.
Yeah.
So that's the thing that frustrated me, was that like we're just depicting him jumping right back into the same stupid shit that got us all into this mess, and that is a thing that makes me feel more like he is going to fail than it is, oh, he made the wrong choice at the exact wrong moment and it fucked everything up.
Yeah.
So that's what I worry about with this movie, right? Where they're going to do that again, where it's just, oh well, you just make the Jedi Order and you don't have attachments and you are basically
Mhm.
monks, and like I want to see them. I want to see a story about somebody trying to forge a new path, and if that is a movie about Rey, great. If that's a show about or something about Luke Skywalker before it goes bad, great. But I something about always reverting back to the Jedi Order, which we mostly have seen in a time when they have like basically failed already. That sucks to me.
It's it's the traditionalist idea that like, okay, because this is how they did it previously, this is how it needs to be again, and that's obviously not going to work in the long run, if not even the short term.
Yeah, and TBD if
And
that's what this movie's
Right.
about, but I want to see something different.
yeah, and that's, I think that would make uh the story more compelling, along the lines of also just figuring out who the bad guy is going to be for the story, because obviously you need some kind of conflict, but you need to have something that differentiates it, because if anything else, it's just going to be repeating the cycle, because as we pointed out in previous Star Wars focused episodes, the Republic, we've seen it, we'll talk more about it next week in our Mandalorian episode, where the New Republic is kind of just a shitty version of the Old Republic, where not the Old Republic that people enjoy,
Right,
but
the
like
previous
the,
Republic. Yeah,
yeah, that
Right.
Palpatine was able to manipulate. And we're seeing a lot of the bureaucracy already just kind of making problems for people, which obviously they're setting that up for what ends up happening, where Leia and uh, Poe have to create their own military, because the New Republic is just kind of fangless, and they're just trying to be like, we're not the Empire,
right.
we're gonna be nice to you when we torture you.
So what is the third movie,
The
sir?
final movie announced, which again, I feel like this is going to go straight to Disney Plus, because it seems like such a far out there timeline. They announced that Dave Filoni will helm the director's chair for a Mandoverse movie, where we will see Bo-Katan, Mando, Ahsoka, and Matt's favorite character, Grief Karga, and Baby Yoda combine and fight Thrawn, I assume, or something. I would assume Thrawn would be the big bad for this, but they said this is like 6 to 7 years down the line, or at least it'll be the culmination of these Mandoverse stories. And it seems like a weird announcement to make, when you literally just had Dave Filoni come out, I think even in that same week, and say, oh, these Mando stories could go for 10, 15 years, we'll go as long as we can.
I could see it being a thing like the first Avengers movie, right? Where and to the degree that it sounds like a big crossover, yeah,
Yeah.
but also in the sense that like it's the culmination of all those movies that are like, here's this character, this character, this character, now they meet, but then stories go on, right? Theoretically, it doesn't, again, and it,
Yeah.
it changes
And
the math when it's almost a decade out, supposedly, but you could see a way that they can do a story where everybody comes together and there's the big bombastic fight, and then there's still another season of Mandalorian. It's just a bunch of shit got resolved, right?
yeah, and if they had announced it for like 2027, I could understand that, because then you can take a year off, do Mando season 4. We have Ahsoka coming out next later this year. You can do another spin-off. You can do like a Hera spin-off. We have Andor, which obviously Andor has no effect on this
Right.
Thrawn storyline. But you can announce a few other things that build up to this movie, and if it's a theatrical release, I feel like that's kind of shooting themselves in the foot, considering all of these stories are being built up on Disney Plus. But I mean, how else are you making your money back on this story as well without a theatrical release? Um, you're kind of giving away money if you're not making it, putting it
Well,
in
and it's
theaters.
it's interesting just because like I think what you said points to something. I mean, we as we are talking, you and I, Josh, just recorded an episode about franchise fatigue that we didn't get into this part of it too much. But I think one of the things that people talk about when they talk about franchise fatigue is the conception that you have to follow a bunch of stuff in order to understand a movie or TV show, right?
Mhm.
So like if this is a theatrical release that years down the line it's Mandalorian the movie or whatever they call it, I think you're going to have a lot of resistance from people who are like, I have to have watched 6 years of TV and like 4 shows to understand this. Whether or not that's actually true in the movie, whether or not the movie itself gives you what you need to enjoy it, there's still that perception that like this is the culmination of like a decade of television that I think turns people off.
Yeah, and I would almost guarantee that the movie is going to be called Heir to the Empire. If it is Thrawn, that's the big bad.
The thing that bothers me about this is that they announce a movie to something that they haven't made a predetermined storyline bridge to. So what you have is you have Mando's 1 through 3, but you also have Book of Boba Fett. Is Boba Fett getting another series? We're not sure. Then you have Osaka. How many Osaka series are there? They already canceled the like Republican Rangers or whatever the heck that series was. They're trying to spin that off sideways. There's been rumblings that they may give Bo-Katan may actually get her own single like kind of like limited run series before leading up to this. It's like, how many pieces are you going to announce, cancel, and then redo to try to fit your Jenga tower to this end point?
Yeah, it's like the cynical view is like it's the worst version of like what people accuse the MCU of being to some degree, where it's like, I think in practice you don't have to have watched all those movies to understand Avengers or whatever, but
Mhm.
that's the perception, is that if you haven't seen 23 movies or whatever they're at now, that
They're over
the
30 now.
next Ant-Man doesn't make any fucking sense, which is probably not true,
Right.
but the perception is there, and that can be a big barrier to people.
Mhm.
Yeah, and so I mean, I'm curious as to how they get there, but if it turns out that Thrawn is the bad guy, then it's like, well, we're already seeing him in Osaka, so he gets away.
Right.
Okay,
Yeah, you're
that
giving away the
that
ending.
season's worthless. you know,
Yeah.
unless the Sun Crusher shows up suddenly, or Dylan McDermott is still alive. They could show one of his clones.
Ian McDermott.
Sorry, Ian McDermott. Thank you.
But I mean, Dylan McDermott is also still alive, for the record.
Yes, he is.
As
True.
of this recording.
Not an unfactual statement. Yes. So those were the movies announced. Those were like the big announcements. They also did touch on Star Wars Jedi Survivor, but that comes out in a couple weeks. So like it was more just like gameplay
I'm hype.
stuff.
I'm hype. That game looks
Yeah,
fucking rad.
and you can have Cal grow a Matt style beard, which I'm definitely gonna have.
It's for the listeners at home, it's just a beard. It's not anything special about me. It's just
You got some good
having a
length
beard.
going on it now. Like you used to keep it a little tight, but now you've got some good length going. So it hanging a little off the chin, or off the jawline. Yeah, I'm gonna make sure I get it as close as I can.
Okay, all right. Well, I'll take photos. I mean, it depends on how messy you can get it. 'Cause
Yeah, I'll need the
people, you
reference
can't.
photos for the digital copy.
Yeah.
But Star Wars Celebration 2023, I don't believe they're doing one next year. They announced that 2025 Star Wars Celebration will be in Japan, which I would assume that probably means some kind of big anime announcements coming. Maybe they'll make a Star Wars anime movie. Who knows?
Yeah, and the movie announcements are interesting because I think a lot of hay has been made about, and we've alluded to it too, like these movies aren't going to happen because, very recently there's been a spate of announcements that like a bunch of movies that were announced to be in development have been taken off the schedule or are no longer happening, right?
Yeah, the Patty Jenkins Rogue Squad, was it Rogue Squadron
Yeah,
movie?
and
Yeah,
there was supposedly like a Kevin Feige produced set of movies or movie or trilogy that is not coming out. And the thing, I think when Star Wars was bought by Disney, Disney was originally like, okay, Star Wars is going to be another MCU. We're going to do a movie a year, maybe more than one movie a year. And then so you get all these announcements where you have the new trilogy, you have Rogue One, you have Solo. So I think all of these people get movies in this period where they're like, it's a gold rush to build out this huge cinematic universe, and then after Solo, kind of gets lukewarm reviews, they realize we can't just do movies constantly. So they pivot to TV. And I think that's why a lot of those movies all got canceled. Partially.
Well,
Partially. So my hope is that they are now at a point where they're like, we're not going to announce a movie that's not actually getting made, but who knows, right?
well, like
It's not a great track record, yeah.
A few weeks ago, Kathleen Kennedy said that the Rogue Squadron movie might still happen, but they didn't say anything about that. So it is kind of interesting that they announced these three movies that they say are deep in development,
Yeah.
which I'm assuming is that these three movies are going to be the movies that are sandwiching the every other year plan that Disney has for Avatar.
Yeah.
Because that's what they originally announced. It was supposed to be like, oh yeah, Avatar 2, then a Star Wars movie, then Avatar 3, then a Star Wars movie, 4 or 5, Avatar movie. I'm assuming that's what what they're trying to do. So what in 2024 we should get Avatar 3, then 2025 is that what we're looking for earliest for the next Star Wars
I
movie?
guess so, yeah. So I mean, it's hard to blame anyone for being skeptical of those movies at this point. I hope that recent bad press has made them realize we cannot just announce a bunch of movies without some specifics, which we did get, granted, and also
Mm-hmm.
without a much more bulletproof plan for them to come
Yeah.
out, where like some of them may still get canceled for like, who knows, right? But hopefully they're at a point where they're not announcing shit just to announce it. But we'll see.
Well, it's
You'd
Star
hope so.
Wars. They'll film half the movie and then fire the directors and put somebody new in place.
Well, yeah, of course. That's tradition.
Yeah, the only one I can guarantee is going to happen is the Dave Filoni one, because he can't fire himself, essentially. I
Yeah.
mean, as much as Kathleen Kennedy is the head of that studio, he is kind of the boss.
He's the guy. He's
Oh
the
my
he's the
God.
creative force at this point.
Yeah.
Can you imagine if halfway through filming that movie, he's fired and like Jon Favreau takes over, and then he's fired, and then they hire Lord and Miller.
Oh, they're back.
to
Yeah,
finish it.
full circle.
Oh, man. I would love nothing more than to see that Lord and Miller Han Solo movie. But let's
Yeah, and then, I would just quick thing. Imagine if that happens. You're watching the movie, you can like, oh, this just feels a little weird. All of a sudden, like this feels like something Favreau would do, and all of a sudden, it just starts playing their version of Solo.
Ooh,
Because
that'd
they
be
were
the
like
highest
3
grossing
days.
movie ever.
They were like 3 days away from the end of that movie.
Yeah. Yep.
All right, sorry.
All right, yeah, let's start wrapping up here. I think the main consensus is we are hyped for all of these announcements, but we are skeptical as well, because
Hell
Star
yes.
Wars just has a weird thing of not delivering what was promised in one way or another.
It's in a weird place right now. I don't think it's a bad place, but it is also a weird place.
Yeah, and it's lots of highs, some mediums. I don't think there's too many lows, other than just like maybe some people being disappointed that what they thought was coming wasn't. Which, if we ever do like a State of Star Wars episode, that's something that I feel is the main problem, is that fans have these expectations, and that was what was a big problem with going from The Force Awakens into The Last Jedi, was where you left too much on the table for people to speculate, and then that speculation just got to a fever pitch, and there was no way The Last Jedi could deliver on that. But that's
I'm
neither.
sorry.
We can't start a Last Jedi discussion now.
No. You said there's really no lows other than fan expectations. Josh, please tell me your review of the Book of Boba Fett out from episode 1. Let's go.
It was absolutely fine. It's just Boba Fett sucks.
How did you enjoy episode 4?
I don't even remember what episode 4 was.
Episode 4 was the episode that was just The Mandalorian, and that episode's pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you can follow me on Twitter at Josh_Scar. You can follow the podcast at Talking Smack Pod. Matt, please let everyone know about our Discord.
Okay, here's how I'm going to pitch it. You heard me rant and just talk incessantly without ceasing. If you want to see that, but in text form, that's Discord, baby. That's our Discord. Maybe I should stop pitching it like that, because I don't think we're seeing a bunch of people join because of this.
Well, I mean,
this pitch,
we have engagement. We have engagement from like the Game Club Pod guys. Abdul and other like our team of people. There's
we got us. We got
here.
some of our podcast friends in there. It's a good time, I can tend to go on because I get excited about talking about things I like, and then next thing you know, I've written 4 paragraphs and nobody responds to it, and I wonder if I made somebody mad.
That answer is yes.
When it comes to Alex, I know the answer is always yes. Anyway, it's a good time. We'd love to have more people there. I'm there all the time because I'm bad at my day job. So
And you can join it because the link will be in the episode description.
yeah,
And if you, as we've said before, next week we are talking about The Mandalorian with a very special guest. I'm not going to say who it is yet because
It's
it's me.
me.
Yeah, it's me and Alex. It's just us again, guys.
But if you want to let us know your thoughts on Mandalorian Season 3, you can email us at tsmackpod@gmail.com, and any other review episodes we will have coming up, plus including Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, which will be very soon. Thank you to Leo Allen for our musical themes. Thank you to Beppo for all of our original avatars. And thank you to Retro AL Studios for our Ricky avatars. Please like, subscribe, rate, review on your podcatcher of choice. And most of all, thanks everyone for listening, and take care. And I forgot to click over the intro music, so it's going to fade in a lot slower than it usually does.
No. The outro music, not intro.
Outro,
the outro
yes.
music this week is by Metallica, fresh off of dropping
God.
72 Seasons, their newest album, yesterday. They're remixing our theme song.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, thanks everyone
You
for
can
listening.
hear Lars's drumming in there. Hear that? Yeah, that sounds great, doesn't it? Oh, there's Kirk's there's solo. Yeah, okay. James is not doing any music right now.
I think
He's
Alex is
singing
trying to
because
pad out so you can't stay watch Star Trek, Matt.
Well,
Stop it, Josh.
watch Andor.
Say it.
Watch
Thanks
Andor.
everyone. Take care.
Watch Andor.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
I was stalling for that. There's James's choral vocals.
They fly now! They fly now!